Guys, and welcome. I'm just making sure everything is working. So if you can see me and if you can hear me, let me know in the chat. Type in there if you can hear me or see me. So I want to make sure that the audio and the visual is coming through. So we will be starting right at 10 a.m. Pacific time. I know there's a lot of you on here from other time zones. So we're going to make sure that we've got everything up and running before that 10 o'clock mark. So let me know in the chat if you can hear me and you can see me. Beth, yay. Okay, thank you. Want to make sure that everything is working and rocking and rolling before we get started here. So I'm just going to check a couple of things on my end real quick to make sure we are all good. Okay, it looks great. Everything, okay, good. You guys can see and hear me. Well, welcome. I'm really excited to have you here today. There is a lot of you, so this is going to be an awesome class. I'm super excited. We have over 1,800 people signed up, which is really exciting news to see that there's so many of you who are looking to raise your own food and to become more self-sufficient and to raise enough so that it takes you through the whole year. So I am really excited about that. I'm going to pop a poll in the chat book real quick because I would love to know where everybody is at currently. So where you're at with your food growing. So there's kind of like beginner, intermediate, and advanced options there for you to pick at. So it'll kind of give me a little bit of a clue where everybody is at. Okay, Lori, you're going to have to try something different. You might, so sometimes a little bit of quick housekeeping. You can always use the chat and let me know in the comments there. And then you will also see Michelle. Michelle is going to be our helper through this. Michelle is my right-hand man during this. So you will see Michelle in there. So when we go into the class, when class starts here in just a couple of minutes, when I'm presenting, I can't see the chat box, and so Michelle is going to be manning it for me. So if you've got questions or concerns, know that Michelle is going to be taking care of you in there, and then she actually can text me as well if there is an issue. So Michelle's in there, and there's a little bit of a delay when I start going through the slides and we get in it. It's about 7 to 10 seconds. So if you hear me referencing a slide and you're like, that's not matching what I see on the screen, just know that in a few seconds it'll catch up. So I try to flip the screen before I actually start talking about it, but there is a little bit of a delay there, just so you know. And for the question and answer time, you probably will have questions during the presentation, but I may be answering them just coming up in the next part of the presentation. I won't be answering the questions until the end. So if you've got questions about what we're talking about at the end, we're going to do our live Q&A session, and I will stay on and we will get all the way through there. So if you're watching and something happens to the picture or you have a little bit of trouble, sometimes you have to refresh or go out and come back in. So that does sometimes happen. So I live way out in the boonies, so we are going to make this Wi-Fi, my internet, work as best as possible. How to disable restricted mode, Katie, so that you can see and hear me. Yeah, I have all of mine. Try going out and then back in, guys. And then we're going to jump right to screen share and see if that fixes it, where it's not trying to do a live, it's just going to be looking at the screen. A lot of times that works a little bit better. Pam, there will, provided the software works correctly, there will be a replay. So the replay will only be up for a couple of days. So if you need to catch this on the replay, you're going to want to watch it as soon as possible because it will be coming down. And of course, you'll miss the live Q&A portion. And the software has always worked and recorded in the past, but you never know. Okay, so I'm going to go to screen share mode. You got a picture, guys? Okay, can you hear me? I'm so sorry. I went back out and came back in again. Let me know if you can hear me now. Okay, hallelujah, you can see me. Amen, and sound. Okay, well, praise the Lord. I'm going to hope that this works now. Okay, guys, I'm so sorry. Thank you for your patience. There's tech gremlins. I don't know what went wrong, but fingers crossed that it's working. Okay. I'm going to try to go to the screen share again so that we can get this presentation started. So please bear with, and we're going to hope that this baby works. So I'm going to go to screen share mode. Okay, so hopefully that is going to take over here. So let me know if you can still hear me, as this is where we had issues the last time. Be a picture up there that says food for a year canning jars. Let me know if you're still hearing me and that screen is up. So I'm going to check with Michelle real quick and see if she sees the slide and can still hear audio via my text. Okay, no picture, small screen. Okay, you can see me. Why is that not working? My goodness, y'all. Okay, hallelujah. We're going to go that it's working. Okay. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me. I switched to do standard instead of high def. I think I was trying to use too much internet. I'm hoping that this works. Okay, amen. We're going to get started. So this is Food for a Year. I'm really excited to have you guys here. And we're going to be doing how to plan your crops and your harvests for a year's worth of food. I've got my phone here. If anything goes wonky, Michelle will text me, but we are just going to pray that we're just going through here. So a couple statements of what I believe, and I think that y'all do too, is our food shouldn't come with a side of pesticides. I truly believe that everybody can grow some of their own food, and they should as well. And I also believe that being self-sufficient and being able to raise enough of a food to take you through a whole year, that doesn't mean that you can't have a day job or that you have to go completely off grid in order to do this. Now, some people want to go completely off grid, and I think that is an awesome choice, but you can still be very self-sufficient and still have a day job if you need to and a regular life. So it's not one or the other. And we're going to have a very special bonus that is only available for this week and once a year that we're going to be talking about more in depth at the end of the presentation. So we're going to be covering in today's class how to decide which crops will give you the most yield, and we will also be talking about how to maximize the amount of food that you can get from the space that you've got. We'll be talking about options for storing a year's worth of food, because a lot of us don't have huge storerooms to keep everything. So I'll be sharing the options and the ways that we do and kind of how I break down and decide the way to preserve different foods. Now let's talk about the first part of this journey, and that is how to plan your crops. So I've got a workbook for today, and if anybody did not get that workbook, I'm going to share the file with you really quick here in the chats. So you can download that and get it if you need to. And then I'm also going to be sharing, it should file with you. And so you can grab that if you need to grab it. So that should be in our chat. Let me get back to the chat, make sure it's showing up in there. If not, it was in your emails and you can go through that too. Okay, so part of planning the foods that your family consumes on a regular basis and that they actually eat. Too often I see that people get really excited with gardening, which I think is amazing, but they want to plant things that you see everybody else planting, or kind of, like on those lists that say your top, top crops and that type of thing. But if it's not a food that you're actually eating, or your family doesn't really like, or you don't prepare on a regular basis, then it's kind of wasted space. So I really recommend that we do things very practical, because we don't have extra time to waste, so that we plant the food that we're consuming on a regular basis and planting enough to take us through a whole year. So what does that look like? Well, if you're already planting and growing some of your own food, then we're going to look at what you have left. And you can really do this any time of year. And I went over this in depth on one of my podcasts. So if you are not a podcast listener, then you are going to want to check out the podcast, because I do a lot of really good trainings in the podcast. But one of the things that I've got here for you, and I'm going to share that file, is a harvest planning and inventory sheet. So I'm sharing that with you so you can grab that. You can download that file. I will also send out in emails when we're done with the class links to these as well, so you can grab those there too. But you want to look at your last year's harvest. So you want to document how much you have left at whatever it be right now. It's obviously February. We're doing this live. And you want to document how much you have left until the next time that you, for me, you can actually see there in the pic, asparagus. Well, asparagus typically is about there, sometimes a little bit earlier. And so those jars until the next time that we harvest, and see if I've got enough to take us all the way through. My green beans are going to be July and August. I count out, and that sheet will walk you through all of that to see if I was able to preserve enough to take us all the way through. And if I have a huge excess of something left, then I know that I don't need to plant as much this coming year. So I also look at my planting records to know, is that enough? Do I need to decrease? Do I need to increase? And it changes from year. So I know that every year that might change. And that's why it's important that you do this inventory every single year, and not just relying on what you've done in years and years past, because sometimes it changes. As our kids grow, they might be eating more, less. We might decide we like different foods better. So that's why I say this is something you want to do on a yearly basis. Now, you might not be growing anything yet, so you can still do the same exercise with store-bought food. You're just going to want how much you're eating of each item on an, and I usually say for a month, because a lot of time we kind of have our favorite recipes and our favorite foods that we on a really regular basis. And so if you can document how much you're eating of it for a whole month, you're going to get a more clear picture. And then really you're going to want to highlight the foods or the crops that several times a week as your top candidates for growing. Okay, guys, it seems a slight audio issue. So I'm going to check with Michelle and see how the audio is on her end too. Sometimes it could be my end, and it could be because we're streaming this live, it could be other people's ends as well. So let me. I'm going to go to the low definition and see if that helps, so that I'm using even less bandwidth. So let me know there. You're going to see me go in and out there for just a minute. And we'll see if that helps. Okay, guys, working on it. Okay, let me know if it's better in a few minutes. Okay, I'm hoping that that fixed the audio so you guys can let me know. Better? Okay, sweet. Better, better, better. Okay, perfect. We're gonna keep rolling. Thank you guys so much for your patience. I really appreciate it. Okay, so we're gonna determine which crops to focus on and grow. So I kind of have a criteria to customize my planting because it's going to be different for everybody, right? And that's really my goal, is for you to be able to customize it for where you're at, your growing season, what your family's eating, and all of that. So what I do is I have my list there from the foods that we're eating on a regular basis, right? And then the ones that we're eating almost every day or every other day or a lot of, those are the ones that I put down in my list. This is the criteria that I use to decide if it's something that we're going to be planting and growing on our homestead and in the garden. One, is your climate or your growing season suitable to this crop? So for me here in the Pacific Northwest, I can't grow sweet potatoes and I can't grow okra, so those really heat-loving things, even if it's an item that we're eating on a weekly basis or quite often, I'm not going to be able to grow it. So right away, that's going to eliminate some of the items. The next thing that I do is I look at it and I see, is this a preserving candidate? Because the goal is to be able to grow enough of that food to take us through a whole year. And the only way I'm going to be able to do that, because our growing season is relatively short here, is to be able to preserve it. So lettuce, I absolutely adore lettuce. We like to have salads and all of that, but lettuce is one that you really can't preserve. You could dehydrate it and grind it up into like a green vegetable powder, but it doesn't freeze well. It's not something that you're going to be canning. So lettuce isn't a crop that I really prioritize on growing enough of for my whole year. So you can see where I'm going with that. And then I also look at, what type of adjustment can I make or do I need to make in order to grow this? So for example, tomatoes here, I can't just put into the ground. The only way that I can grow tomatoes is if I start them in the house. And so by making that adjustment, and we're really wet here, so typically with your tomatoes, blight can be a problem with a lot of rainfall and those colder temps that we have here in the Pacific Northwest. So I have put up a greenhouse and I start them very early, and that allows me to grow them. Now, if you're just starting out, that might not be a route you want to go, and that's totally fine. Focus on the other crops first that you don't have to do any special type of workaround with, that you can just get to grow. So you have to know your gardening zone, and specifically your first and last average frost date. Everything in the gardening world and growing your own food really revolves around knowing what these dates are. And in your workbook, you'll be able to, if you don't know what your area is, that you can check that out and find that out. And I'll also, like I said, be providing in emails later for these. So knowing your first and last frost date is going to let you know when you need to seed start. It's going to let you know when you can plant things direct sow, and also when you can plant your cooler weather crops, which is going to be before that last average frost date in the springtime. So it's really going to determine everything for you in your area, that you know that. And I am going to go back into the file sharing here, you guys, and I'm going to share with you file to share with you. Let me get into this section. And it is the seed starting and how much to plant. So I'm going to share that with you in the files. And the reason that's important is because it's going to give you everything you need to know for your area and your first and last average starting seeds, and the general guidelines on how much of each plant you need for each person or for a family to take you a full year. So really great document that I'm going to give you there. And again, it'll go out in an email if you don't get it here as well. So let's move on to talking about picking the right variety of each plant for your growing season. So when we have our growing season, some of you have a really long growing season and others of you are relatively short. I'm kind of in the middle. I go a little bit towards the short end. So for example, our warm weather crops, and warm weather crops are going to be all of your typical summer vegetables that you would grow in a summer garden. So peppers and tomatoes and cucumbers, all your varieties of winter squash, all your varieties of summer squash, your beans, your legumes, all of those things are going to be planted for me in mid to the end of May. And then we have our first frost in the usually the middle of September. So what that means is I've really got about a 90-day period that I can grow and harvest all of these crops. So when I'm looking at the types, so I've decided that tomatoes, right? I'm deciding that I need to make sure that I am picking the variety that has germination period and also days to harvest period so that I can make sure that it's growing for me. Okay, guys, frozen no sound. Let me know if that's for everybody or for just a few of you. I'll check in with Michelle. The slides are not advancing. We should be on a read the description slide. And this is in reference. You're good? Okay. You can try going in and out for most people. So I'm going to just keep ahead. So for the descriptions, you can look at this on the back of seed packets. And we do have the beauty of the internet now. So you're also able, a lot of times you've got seed companies, if you don't have a seed packet, but you're going to look to order online, which is the way that I order the seeds. I'm not seed saving myself. I do go the online route because we do an all heirloom seed garden. And when I go to the grocery store, or if you go to a gardening center, I'm much more limited on what they've got available. And I want to make sure that I'm getting everything that grows really well for my area and for my specific purposes, right? So you're going to want to look at your seed packet or on the internet description how many days to germinate. And that simply means on the criteria screen. Okay, let me turning the screen share off and then bringing it back up. Let's see if that works. And there is a little bit of a delay. So I'm going to give it just a few seconds. And what should be showing up on the screen is reactions. So let's give it just a minute. Okay, that worked. Okay, we're going to move on ahead then. Awesome. So read the descriptions. How many days does it take it to germinate? That is when you put it in the ground, or if your seed's starting in soil, how many days until it sprouts and begins to grow? And that's going to vary. How many days to harvest? So it'll usually say, you know, anywhere from 45 to 60, sometimes to 90 days, depending upon the plant. If you're working with that shorter window of a growing season like I am, I always pick the ones that have the least amount of days till harvest so that I get the longest harvest season possible before we get those killing frosts that come in. The other thing that I also look at when I'm reading the that I haven't growing before, then I look to see, is it more suited to a cooler climate or a hot climate? So a lot of times within a plant, so say cucumbers, for example, it will say this is suited to more cooler climates and vice versa to more hotter climates. I always try to pick a variety that is suited to my climate. Okay, excuse me, guys. Of course, the other thing that I look at are, does the days to harvest fit with your growing season? And I also see, can I grow this? Start with seedlings, or I start the plants indoors myself. That is what I have. Are tomatoes. It's what I have to do with a lot of the all of the more of those heat-loving plants. So I'll even start basil. Basil likes a lot of heat, so I will still indoors as well. Plan it out, and I've got to jump on it. So I look at there's an easy way for us to do that. Ashley, the slideshow afterwards, yes, I can email you guys out a PDF of the slideshow as well. We will definitely do that. So the other thing that I consider is, can I purchase this variety anywhere else? So for example, I do an heirloom paste tomato, and it's a San Marzano Lungo #2 to be exact. That I have never seen in the stores for me to buy. Paste tomatoes aren't usually something that you can buy a whole bunch of. Usually it's more table eating tomatoes. And that specific variety, I've never had in all of the nurseries and the gardening stores around here that put seedlings out. That variety is not one that I come across. So that's another reason that I have to make sure that I've got those seeds started and I'm growing that one myself, because I can't get it anywhere else. It's the different criteria that I use. Diana, if we use heirloom seeds, can you tell us how to serve for our first year's harvest? I won't have time to go into that within this presentation, but I have a complete seed saving e-course within the Pioneering Today Academy that goes into this very video tutorials and download tutorials that are in print. The tomato variety that I grow specifically for making tomato sauce is a paste tomato, and it's an heirloom San Marzano Lungo #2. And I can put that in an email that goes out to you after this presentation, can let you know that as well. So the next tip that we have for making sure that we're able to grow a year's worth of the crop is to take advantage of the space that you have. Now, we're really lucky here where I live. We have almost 15 acres. But truthfully, of the plants that we grow, that's all done in our yard. So if you've got a big yard, we grow over 50% of our vegetables and fruit for the entire year, which is a good-sized garden, and some fruit trees, blueberries, and raspberries. And I will show you some photos of those size of those as we go on. The rest of the acreage we do use for our livestock. We grow 100% of our own meat here on the homestead. So we raise all of our own grass-fed beef cattle, pork, laying hens for eggs, and then we also do all of our own meat chickens. So aside from the livestock, you can grow your own. So how to take advantage of that? Because I know a lot of you do have a really small area, and you're like, my goal is to move to have a bigger yard, but I want to do something now, which I completely agree. And even in a small space, you can do quite a bit. So let's go into talking about going vertical, because this is going to maximize the space, and that's what we want to do. We want to maximize where you are. So if at all possible, we're going to go vertical. So what do I mean by that? If you're going to grow a green bean, which I highly recommend that you grow a green bean, pick a pole or a climbing variety if you have. So with green beans, for example, of course, you've got a bush bean and you've got pole beans. You're going to have a lot more harvest off of the pole bean, at least in my experience. They are more prolific for a lesser amount of space. So I always do a pole variety. You can also train your squashes, you guys, so anything that vines out, of course, peas, but also things, cucumbers, zucchini, anything that's a vining and spreading, you can train that squash to climb up a fence or a trellis, giving you more ground space so that you can put more crops into the ground. So think about going vertical wherever you can with any varieties. Now, you might have a back porch, you might have a back patio. We have a back patio. So what we did is we put up a grape arbor. And off of that grape arbor, it's really great. You'll be able to see pictures there. I think it should be advanced, and you'll be seeing that on the screen now. But we're able to grow a lot of our own grapes. We have a table eating grape, and then we've got another one. We didn't actually realize at the time that it was a wine grape, but that's what I use to make grape jelly. It's got quite a bit of seeds in it. Doesn't ever really get sweet, but it's perfect for making grape jelly and grape juice. The other side is our table eating grapes, so we just eat those bad boys fresh. And then I can also dehydrate those to make our own raisins. So if you've got to think about, is there a way you could put a trellis or an arbor up that you could grow something on like grapes? It's also great because in the summertime it provides excellent shade. And I also have a cooking outdoor kitchen when it's really hot out, or if the power goes out, that I can cook outdoors. So it really serves multiple purposes. This slide is not advancing again. Okay, let me go out again really quick. I don't know why we don't want to advance slides. Okay, so we should be seeing a picture of the grape arbor. Let me know real quick, and then we will advance. I'm going to check with Michelle and see if it's showing now, because I do have that slight delay on my end. It's good now. Okay, perfect. So now we are seeing the grape arbor. So like I said, think about it. If you've got a walkway, could you do maybe not a full arbor, but just a trellis or a small arbor over a walkway? Something like that. So you really want to think about and look at the area if you could do something like this. It may be on a smaller scale, but even if you could just do a small arbor, even through a walkway, that will help you out. And grapes are great because as far as fruit goes, fruit can take a while depending upon what you're planting before it starts to bear fruit. And we will talk about perennials and annuals here in a moment. But one of the great things is your grape, even if you're planting from a little itty bitty baby plant or a start, you're able to get a start from someone, it's going to start producing fruit for you. Ours do in the second year. So that's relatively quick when it comes to fruit. So grapes can be a great way, and they also don't take a whole lot of maintenance. They don't take a lot of composting, that type of thing. So they're really great that way as a relatively quick perennial. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit here about landscaping for food. We went over adding in a trellis or an arbor if at all possible. Some other things that you can do, and these work really great. I have a friend who, they have a relatively small yard. They live where we live. They've got some those whiskey barrel, half barrel planters, and they are able to grow just in their back patio with their flowers and everything else. They do pole beans. So those will actually grow in a planter. Peas, cucumbers, melons, zucchini, indeterminate grapes and hardy kiwi are all things that you can use in your landscaping and that will grow either up a trellis or up an arbor, that you can train them to grow up that way. And also they will grow, not necessarily the grapes or the hardy kiwi, but the other varieties will grow in a container. So you can have this trellis, and maybe on half of it you've got grapes, but you can use the other side of the trellis or the arbor to grow some of those other items. So it just gives you a greater variety there. Now let's talk about container planting. Can you plant more than one species on a trellis? Yes, you absolutely can. In fact, like I said, with our grape arbors, we have 2 different types of grapes that are growing on the arbor at the same time. So with container planting, you can do a lot with containers. And I still do grow things in containers, even though we have, like I said, almost 15 acres. So for container planting, I like to use pots for my peppers, my lettuce, my herbs, strawberries. You can do tomatoes. You can even do some fruit in container planting. So compact trees, blueberries have a very shallow root, so that actually makes them a great candidate for doing in a container. Dwarf fruit trees. Some of your dwarf fruit trees will grow for years in a container planter. So this is perfect if you're at a spot where you know it's not your permanent home, that you're going to hopefully be moving in a year, a couple years. You can get started with these, with your perennials, specifically the blueberry varieties, your strawberries. Those come back every year, and your dwarf trees now in a large container. And I like to do my peppers in containers because, as I shared, here in the Pacific Northwest, we ain't so hot. We're pretty cold. So on cooler days, I can move those peppers to warmer areas and make sure that they're getting the maximum amount of heat that I can give to them. With a lot of slugs here and slug lettuce, so when they're in containers, it keeps them up off of the ground your time, controlling the slugs and the snails. So some tips for success when we're talking about container planting. One of the things that you really have to make for planting is your container is mimicking the earth, right? So we want to make sure that we do the best as possible. You want to make sure that whatever container that you're using has proper drainage. So at least one large drain hole in the, preferably a couple if you live in an area that has, like the Pacific Northwest. I like to do it if it's a really large planter. In the bottom quarter, I will put some large rocks or some gravel so that I don't have standing water. Root rot can be an issue if you are in a really wet. And so I'll fill that bottom quarter of it with some large rocks or gravel. You want to make sure you're using a good mix of potting soil and compost. And you also want to go larger whenever possible. The larger you go, it's going to be better for the plants because there's going to be the availability that it will hold water longer when you need it to. You're going to have a larger surface area for the plant within draw its nutrients from, less chance of it becoming root bound, and you're not going to have to transplant it to a larger container as fast. So it's going to be less. So you can use all types of things. You can use old bathtubs if they're, you know, like the old metal bathtubs. I've seen people use old wheelbarrows. I do like the whiskey barrels. Those are a good size, but you can use all kinds of things for your containers. Excuse me, guys. I got to take a drink real quick. I'm coming down with a cold, and my voice is trying to go out on me. So get creative with your containers. All kinds of different things that you can use. Tomatoes actually have a really big root system, and so if at all possible, I like to do tomatoes in the ground, but tomatoes, people don't realize such a large root system. Tomatoes actually have a larger root system than things like even blueberries, even though they're sometimes not as big of a plant. Another thing I like to do with the containers is I try to mix things. Mix in herbs with my flower landscaping too. So even if you don't have a lot of, I will put in with my flowers that are right at our front door that greet people when they come to our house. I will put my herbs, anything in the mint family, it will tends to spread like crazy. You're going to want it in a container anyways, unless you don't mind like mint gone wild all over the homestead. Sage container. So I've got chamomile and a couple different kinds of mint and sage in with my regular front door, some lavender. So think about that. Think about ways that you could work it into existing. Lavender does really well in flower beds as well. It took kind of putting in some herbs and growing some natural medicine. It's beautiful smelling. It draws the bees, which and lavender, if it's a rocky area where other things won't grow, lavender and rocky, even poor soil. Okay, guys, so let's talk about planting versatile preserving crops. So we went over our criteria for picking what to plant and based upon our growing season and that. But what do I mean by planting a versatile preserving crop? Well, what I mean by that, and we're going to be talking a little bit, is I try to pick a crop that I can preserve it in multiple ways or I can get dual harvest from. What I'm talking about specifically, this is one of my, if I could only plant one crop, this is what, and that is specifically this variety of pole bean. I'm going to check real quick and make sure we still have sound for everybody else. Attracting bees, lavender is a great bee attractor. I'm going to check with Michelle that we still have sound. But a lot of your herbs that flower, so chamomile, even oregano and thyme. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Elisa. Um, Almost all of your herbs that flower will attract bees. So we have oregano and I have thyme, and they attract bees in the summertime when they're flowering like crazy pants. So there's some great ones to add in to give the bees food and to bring those pollinators to your garden area. So my family has been seed saving for over 100 years, over generations, an heirloom green pole bean. We call it a Tar Heel because my grandparents brought it with them from North Carolina up in the Appalachians to Washington State in the 1940s when they migrated out here. One of the beautiful things, though, about growing something that's multi-purpose like this, which is the green bean, is so that fits our vertical criteria of being able to get more out of our crop area and the space that we have. When it's young, which you can see in the picture there, and it's a green bean, then that's perfect for just canning up and eating fresh or freezing if you're not going to can green bean. Next, you're going to have your shelled variety. So as the bean matures, this produces a fairly good sized white bean. So this is the shelled bean. And so we use it like you would a navy bean or a white bean. So you would use it, in soups, and you can make refried beans out of it if you want to, that type of thing. And then it goes to its last stage, which is when it's ready to seed save and harvest for your seed, and that's your seed bean. So what's really nice about this is I'm getting my fresh eating green bean. I'm also getting my white bean, my dried bean, which is also my seed. Now, there's a lot of different shelled bean varieties out there, but they're not necessarily a green eating bean at the same time. This one is both. It's a dual purpose bean. And if you want to be able to get some of my family's seed that we've been saving, you're going to want to stay tuned because I've got lots of information about that. Deborah, yes, that is the exact same bean in all 3 stages. So that's one of the reasons that I absolutely adore this bean. And I usually do a section of teepees with the poles. So usually about 35 to 40 plants for the whole year. And I get enough of the green bean to eat fresh and then to also can. So I usually put it between, on average, about 60 to 70 jars canned of it as a fresh green bean a year. And then I get enough to use as my dried bean and to seed save. So that's why I say if you can find a really prolific pole bean, you're going to get a lot of harvest from just the small amount of plants. They are a string bean. These are ones that you do have to string. A lot of the pole varieties are a string bean, not all, but these ones are ones that you will need to string. Though when they're really young, they don't have much of a string, and so if you're picking them when they're really quite immature, then there's not a lot of stringing to take place. So let's talk about tomatoes. So tomatoes are the other crop that if I had to pick my top picks, it would be green beans and tomatoes. And the reason for that is because your tomato is such a versatile crop. Of course, you can eat it fresh. And I always choose a paste variety for making my salsas and my sauces and my soups. And the reason for that is your paste variety of tomato has less water in it. It also, generally speaking, has greater flavor when it's cooked and you're making your sauces and your paste. So I like to do a paste tomato because when I go to make my sauce or my salsa, I'm saving time because I don't have to let it simmer so long before it thickens up. On the green bean side, let me know, guys. It is a paste tomato, Erin. Yes. So something like a paste tomato is one that I do. And then it also dehydrates faster. It's a great dehydrating candidate just because it has less of a water content. But it's also really good fresh eating as well. Our beans do grow for a long period of time. Okay, guys, let me do our in and out here real quick. Okay, guys, I'm hoping that this fixed it. Can you see me now? Okay. Can you hear me now? Can see me but no sound. Okay. Let me see if the sound is coming through now. Checking really quick. Yes, you can see and hear me now. Okay, well, hallelujah. It's a 3-panel screen. Well, let's see. I don't need 3 panels up. Let me see if it goes to screen share. If that will put us on just back to one screen. Okay, so hopefully just the tomatoes come back up. Let me know in chats if you can see a screen with tomatoes on it and you can still hear me. Hallelujah. Let's hope. Okay. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I do not know what is up with the software today, but we're going to keep rolling with it. Okay, so with the tomatoes, as I said, I choose a paste variety for many different reasons. Hallelujah. So one of the reasons that I like to focus on tomatoes, we're buffering. Okay, it looks like it's good for the majority of us. I'm hoping that that's true. Spring screen. Oh, my goodness. Still buffering, huh? Okay, how about now? You can still hear buffering and sound. Not getting anything but buffering. Oh my goodness, this thing is driving me crazy pants, you guys. You can see it? No, you can't. Okay, hell yeah, gotta love computers. Amen, sister. Laura, your sound is fine. Okay. Michelle, you're still getting buffering too. You can hear Inez. Okay. I'm going to try and go with this, guys. Okay, if you can hear me. So one of the things that okay, guys, we're working on it. Okay. Hoping that going in. Lisa, thank you so much. I do not know why this thing is going goofy pants. Okay, sound is back. Hallelujah. Hopefully this will keep going. Okay, so we're going to focus on crops that are a main point of the meal first. So those are the ones that I like to do, especially with tomatoes. So a tomato sauce you can turn into so many different things. So tomato sauce can be turned into pizza sauce. Obviously, it can be turned into pasta sauce. You can turn it into tomato paste if you want. It's a great, you can just have it make a tomato soup right out of that tomato sauce. And so tomato sauce is so versatile that I like to can up as much as possible tomato sauce as I can. And then I do salsa as well. And salsa can make a really quick chili. If you don't have time to chop up peppers or you don't have them, then you can just take that chili and you can make you can take your salsa, excuse me, and turn that into chili. Okay, making sure we're all up again. It's looking that that is the case. So another thing that I really like to do when I'm looking at creating it to grow enough food for the entire year is I want to make sure that I'm creating a mixture of both perennials and annuals with the plants that we're growing. And the tomato San Marzano Lungo, which is a paste, it is an indeterminate variety. Keep on growing. It doesn't get to just a certain size and then stop. So one of the things that we like Okay, guys, okay. Okay, guys, so with the fruit, I like to put in fruit trees. Now, when you're putting in fruit trees, no sound, let me know if you can hear me now. Lost the sound. Oh my Lanta, y'all. Okay, fruit slide is up, but no sound. Okay, let me. Five to 7 years before you get fruit production when you are starting with just a small tree that's in its first year. But one of the beauties of your perennials are they take very little work once they're in and established from year to year. So it's not something that you have to plant every year. It just comes back. And they usually, once they get established and they're mature, then you're going to have a lot of harvest that comes off of those items. So fruit trees are one of my favorite things to put in. We also do raspberries. So we have approximately 40 canes, and when that slide shows up on the screen for y'all, you are gonna see we have just one long row and it's about 40 canes, and that produces enough raspberries for us to take us through the difficulties. Okay, guys, checking to see if you can hear me. I have no idea why it keeps going in and out like this. My sincere apologies. Can you hear me now? I am so sorry. Okay, I'm going to try. I know, I am so frustrated, y'all. I will try and record this and get it to you. We're going to try doing this again, going back with the fruit and just praying that this thing holds. So we're going to get through. Okay, I'm going to go through real quick. So for the raspberries, like I said, we have 40 canes. That takes us through a whole year. I don't ever buy raspberries from the store. Same thing with our blueberries. So with our blueberries and our rhubarb, I actually plant them together because they both like acidic soil. So I try to plant light things together that have the same specifications. And for our blueberries, we have about 5 blueberry bushes, and they range from 5 to 2 years old. And those are the ones towards the left in the photo. And from those, I get enough blueberries to take us through an entire year too. So one of the things that I also think about when I am looking at the food that we're going to grow to take us through for the year and to put in is if I can frugally purchase a large amount of that crop somewhere else. So, for example, I can purchase a whole lot of carrots. I can purchase easily a whole lot of peaches. And so those are things, if I want to can and preserve enough to take us through the whole year, I'll just go ahead and purchase those because I can get them at a pretty decent price and not try to grow those. So that's kind of what I look at it. Now with the tomatoes, I can't purchase those paste tomato varieties in the amount that I need anywhere and not for really cheap. So that's why I decided to grow a large amount of those. So that's kind of a criteria I look at is in my area locally, can I purchase a large amount of this crop to preserve to take us through a whole year, even if I can't grow it? And then I try to make sure that we're growing the items that really I can't get at a cheap amount, or I can grow a lot of with the amount of space that we have. So it's kind of my criteria because truthfully, you can't grow everything yourself to take you through a whole year. Not even the pioneers did. I mean, they still would trade and purchase from the store. Most of the food that they had was from their own land, but they still did purchase some. So that's kind of how I try to take my criteria and decide what it is. Now, crops that we raised a year's worth of are beans, tomatoes, garlic, applesauce, which we raise apples and I have enough to make applesauce, but not for fresh eating necessarily throughout the whole year, but enough for a year's worth of applesauce. Our blueberries, our raspberries, all of our own chicken, pork, beef, and the majority of our herbs I'm able to grow enough to take us through a whole year. So even if you're starting small, if you could do beans and tomatoes and herbs, and you can do all of those in containers if need be, that is a great place to start. Let's see here. So I'm talking about real life on the homestead, kind of what it takes to grow all of this, crops that we raise. Okay, so you'll see a picture currently, praying that everything holds together. And we're standing in front of our vegetable garden, and that's my husband and our 2 kids. And that's our annual summer vegetable garden where we grow almost 50% of our vegetables. And we do all of this, including 100% of our own meat, with my husband working a day job. He's also a volunteer firefighter, an EMT, and fire commissioner. The kids are in school, and then I do the blog, and I'm an author, and the podcast, and all of that. So why I'm sharing that is to let you know that it's possible to do all of this, even if you're still working and you guys are busy and have a lot of things to do. So how much time does it really take? I get asked that a lot. How much time is it really going to take for me to be able to do all of this, like realistically, where are we at? So when it comes to doing your fruit trees or your fruit bushes, and the example of blueberries, perennial herbs, that type of thing, initial planting, and this is going to depend on how much you're planting, right? But averagely, it's going to be about 2 hours to do your initial planting, and you have an annual pruning of your fruit tree year for us. So it's usually in late winter, early spring growing season fruit trees. And we have 7 fruit trees, 1.5 to 2 hours pruning once a year. And then we have raspberries and blueberries, and I also apply any type of fertilizer and mulch at the same time. And that's about 2 hours. Again, it's only once a year. And then with the herb, once a year pruning, and then every few years dividing the herb up if needed. And that's only about 30 minutes. So it does depend on how many you have, but just estimate about what we've got. Butcher our own chicken, butchered our own pork in the past. That just depends the space that we've got, if it's cold, that and I do have in our livestock series, Raising There and Today Academy, I talk about and do all of that. So annual vegetable garden time. Initial potting takes me about, and then maintenance on those seed starts is about 5 to 10 minutes of active daily time, and that's checking on the grow light, that type of. We do a yearly compost, fertilizer, and working the soil vegetable garden, and that takes about 1 to 2. And so planting. So this is when we our regular vegetable garden, and that's about 2 hours whole garden, and then there's a weekly maintenance of about 2 to 3 hours, but that's spread out throughout each 15 to 20 minutes a day max is into the vegetable garden when everything is up and growing. When it comes to container gardening, you got to fertilize when it's in a container. So because it's not draw the nutrients from the ground and surrounding soil because it's then we fertilize. So about every 2 weeks I use a liquid fish fertilizer, and that only usually takes about. And then weekly maintenance is I check the soil for water needs daily in the heat of summer. And that just takes me because I'll water if it needs it. If it doesn't, then it's going to be. And the size of our vegetable garden, gosh, what is the feet of that? I should have had that written down. Joe, that goes out, the exact size of our vegetable garden. We have it fenced, so it'll look that up. Now, the other tip is how to preserve and store the harvest. So what are your options when you're really looking at preserving and storing an entire year's worth of food? And so I'm going to share how we do it and what works best on the specific crop. We use a chest freezer for our whole birds. So we raise and butcher all of our own meat birds once a year, usually about 15. And that takes us through the whole year, our own beef and our own pork. So we kind of rotate through there. We're also fish and crab here where we live, and so we get a year's worth of crab and fish, but it's not something we're raising. It's just something we go out and really include that. But my whole pork, I do can some of our meat. And then the whole berries, I do freeze blueberries, pesto, and my extra tomatoes will go in the freezer. And those extra tomatoes, then I will turn those into essentially can them. The other way, so that's what I put in our whole freezer, is dehydrating. So I will dehydrate fruits and bries. Some I dehydrate, and then some tomatoes. I will dehydrate some of our, and I also dehydrate a lot of our herbs. Pesto, so I keep that frozen, and I will freeze some fresh herbs, but the majority of them I dehydrate. And so that's how we keep our herbs for the whole canning. John, you can crab meat, but nor crab meat in the freezer. You pack it and then put it in the freezer. So for canning, we can up our meat. I can up almost all of our vegetables. I don't really freeze any vegetables. The majority of it gets canned unless it's zucchini, which is not a candidate for canning. And then also broccoli. We will freeze broccoli that too. Jams, jellies, pie filling, syrup, fruit, salsas, all of those we can. And I also use root cellar techniques. Even though we don't have a basement, we will use winter tomatoes, onions, and garlic. All get stored techniques. Okay, guys, so why you are here is you want to know what's in your food and what you don't want to be dependent upon the grocery store, and you want to preserve your own food and all traditions on to others. You can vegetables, yes, Erin, different, but you can't just can zucchini all by itself without a great distinction there. Got some options, guys, which is trial and error, which I'm sure many of us have done, spending a lot of time researching. And, oops, making sure we are still all the way up here. Okay. So you've got options of doing that, or you can take advantage of others' learning mistakes. somebody who's put in the research and yet having all the information in one place. So no hours lost going down the internet rabbit hole. And then getting support from others, people who understand what it is to grow your own. Okay, guys, we're trying this again. Okay, so with the Pioneering Today Academy, which thankfully is not live, so it's all up and ready and waiting for you. We have all modules that we can go again. Sound is back. Okay, you're on the options slide, last sound. Okay, sound is back. Okay, sorry guys, I don't know what's up with this. We're gonna just do our best to get through here. We have, within the Pioneering Today Academy, I have 6 different e-courses. So growing your own fruits and vegetables is one of them. I take you through seed starting, transplanting, crop rotation, all that kind of stuff. Hopefully I'm still holding on. Pruning, container gardening, and then in module 2, a lot of you were asking about seed saving. So we have an entire section on seed saving where we talk about self-pollinating plants, cross-pollinating plants, hand-pollinating, how to store your seeds that you've saved, and everything like that. I'm checking to see that we're all back, that everything is back. Then in module 3, we've got livestock. So laying hens, meat chickens, including how to butcher them at home. And then we also talk about raising your own pork and your own grass-fed beef. Then we've got the home canning with confidence. So this is a complete canning course from water bath canning all the way through pressure canning, including canning your own soups, your own meats, how to smoke meat and then can it, which is a little bit different procedure than just smoking meat for regular eating. So all of that is in there with a very big emphasis on safety. Also teach you how to make your own jams and jellies, low sugar or no sugar, and options for not using store-bought pectin. You don't have to use store-bought pectin to get a gel on your jam and jelly. So all of that, but with safety really being front and center, because there's a lot of canning advice and recipes online that are not safe. So we go over all the safety in there, including canning outside and creating an outdoor kitchen for your canning. Then we've got our 5th e-course, which is homesteading skills and herbs for natural medicine. So teach you growing your own herbs, how to harvest them, how to build a natural medicine cabinet, how to make tinctures out of there, homesteading skills such as soap making, so you learn how to make soap. All of that is available for you. And then we have traditional kitchen, so how to render your own lard. Our complete series on grinding your own flour, how to bake with fresh flour, how to make your own homemade bread, and troubleshooting. We've got a lot of really great things in there, as well as how to ferment, so how to do fermented vegetables, and we have some dehydrating lessons in there. So a lot of things that you need to know on having a traditional kitchen. So what you'll create when you join the Pioneering Today Academy. Oh, stuck on livestock still? Let me see, guys.